Hi, Jesse with eTrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at and I'll show you how to set up the Roadmaster Wiring Kit for flat-toed vehicles with LED taillights on this 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. There's 5 main components when looking to set up your vehicle for flat tow, starting with the base plate. That's going to be your structural mounting point on the towed vehicle that will connect to your motorhome through the next component, which is your tow bar here. That's the physical link between the two. Then we have our braking, and that will allow you to use the vehicle's brakes so you're safer on the road. You're not just relying solely on the motorhome's brakes. It's going to let you come to a nice controlled stop. Then our diode wiring, which is there to send a signal from the taillights on the motorhome to the taillights on your towed vehicle. That again will keep you safe on the road. It's going to allow other drivers to know what you're doing. And last, we have our safety cables here. These are here just as a last resort in case of a catastrophic disconnect. If everything gets disconnected, these are here. You can control your vehicle and get pulled over on the side of the road. To hook it up, you'll just lift the lid up and get this in there. It will be pretty snug, but you kind of want it that way just so it doesn't fall out while you're towing down the road. So once that's plugged in, that's going to send our signal through the umbilical from your motorhome straight to the back of the vehicle with the included wiring that we ran back, and then those diodes that plugged into the taillights. All in all, this is just a really essential thing to have if you're flat towing a vehicle. It's going to keep you safe and legal on the road, make your turn signals and your brake lights and your tail lights on your towed vehicle function. As far as setup goes, it's just a matter of finding a mounting point in the front and fishing some wires through up into the engine bay and then down underneath all the way back to the tail lights. So if this isn't something that you're ready to do, maybe you don't have the time or space to do it yourself, feel free to check out our dealer locator and you'll find somebody happy to help you. If you are ready to tackle this project on your own, then just follow this video and I'll show you how we set up ours. I like to just tape it up to where our 6-pole is going to be mounted. We will be adding our mounting or our plug on later. But I just tape it there so it holds with a little bit of slack. Then I brought it up behind this. Just be sure to not run it behind the shutters because you'll interfere with that. I ran it up behind the headlights. And then I brought it out to this point. So when we get to this point, the way I like to do it is I like to ground off under the hood here. So I'm just going to cut our white wire. That's going to be our ground. And try to separate that from the rest. Take my strippers. Just strip a bit off the end of that. Try it again. I didn't get all the stuff off. And just give that a nice twist. Take a ring terminal and crimp that around our wire. And I found a nice grounding point here under the hood. I'll actually run it under here with this bolt right here. That should be a nice solid ground. So I'll stick a washer, and I found a nut that threads on there. One of the reasons I like to ground under the hood here is a lot of these kits won't come with extra wire. So once we get back to the tail lights, we'll need a jumper wire. And the kit doesn't come with any extra wire included. So what I'll do is, since I cut that white wire off short, I'll just strip this. I'll strip it all the way off, and then I have plenty of wire to connect our tail lights in the back. Brought our wiring down from the engine compartment through the wheel well liner. I had to remove a couple 8mm screws just so I could guide it along the way. And then I fed it out through here. There was a little pocket. And then we brought it up above this skid plate here. Just kind of fed it along. I went above the fuel filler hose, up above our subframe here, and above the axle. And once we got to this point, it's time to split our wires into two sections, because we need our green wire to run to our right side tail light, and the yellow and brown will go to our left side. So to split them, I'll just use some kind of cutters, and they usually peel right off. So at this point we'll have to feed them up through the tail light pockets, but first we will need to remove the tail lights. So I'll show you how to do that. Now to remove the tail lights, you'll have to pop back this plastic panel here. Just a couple clips holding it in. That should pop out. And then behind that is a T25 Torx. Remove that. And now all we have to do is push this to the outside. There's just clips holding it in that way. So it should pop right out. And yours may look a little different than that. This one, we do have 4-pole wiring for our rear hitch here. So you'll just unplug it the same way. Just push this tab down and it should pop out.
All rolling.
So I ran this piece of airline tubing down through this pocket behind our tail light. You could also use a metal clothes hanger or something like that. I just ran it down there, then taped our yellow and green wires, our yellow and brown wires, sorry. And then once they're taped on, I should be able to just pull them up. We need to work with our factory wiring harness here. So I like to cut back some of this tape that is covering them, because we'll need some room to work. You could be very careful with a razor blade or something like that. Just try not to cut any wires. But the wire on the left side that we'll be working with is actually this this yellow wire. So once I get all this peeled back, I will show you how we'll be connecting that into our diodes. So we just twist these two wires together. I got a heat shrink butt connector. The kit comes included with just a regular butt connector, but everybody around the shop here prefers to use this anytime we're on the outside of a vehicle. So let's take that and crimp it down nice and tight. Give it a nice tug, make sure nothing's loose there. We're all good. Now for that extra slack that I have, I'm going to strip that down kind of long. This butt connector's pretty wide. Strip it back, fold it in half. That's going to give us more material to crimp down. So slide it in there. And crimp it down. Then we just need to add a spade connector onto the end here. Let's do that real quick. Just like everything else, just crimps down. And then these two wires will run our tail light. They'll plug into the RV tail in. The yellow wire from our 6-pole that we ran back is RV brake in. Then the yellow wire on the factory wiring harness for the car, we cut that in half, tied it into car in and car out. And then a white wire that's included in the kit, we ground it out, and then I crimped on the ring terminal that was included. And then you just got to find a good spot in here where you're not going to interfere with the tail light being installed. So I pre-drilled my hole there, and we'll just self-tap that down. Here on the passenger side, it's essentially the same thing, except we just have the one white wire that we ran over instead of combining it with the brown. and we spliced into the green wire on this side for the car in and car out. So I like to wrap electrical tape around here real tight just to hold these spade terminals in a little better. And before I did that, I peeled off the backing for this sticky tape. So I'm just gonna stick this down here. Make sure you stick it in down in your pocket just so you have room to install your taillight, and push any of these extra connectors down in there because once you get the taillight in, it is pretty cramped up here. But I'll get our taillights back in place and then we'll move up to the front and do our wiring up there. Now we're here at the front of our vehicle on our base plates. I have a connector here. Our diode kit did not come with this included. However, many base plate kits and tow bars will come with one. Just be sure to double check. If not, we do sell them separately here at eTrailer. So with our base plate, we have a mounting point right here. That's super nice and easy to use. However, some base plates, they will be in different spots or maybe won't even have a bracket like this. So just make sure you planned out where you're going to mount this connector first, and then we can run our wires into it. So I'll go over where each wire is going to go, starting with GD. That's our ground. That will be our white wire. LT will be yellow. That's left turn. RT will be green. That's right turn. And then TM will be our brown wire. That's going to control our tail lights. So before we start hooking these up, make sure to slide your boot going this way first. So once you tie these in, if you forget that step, you'll have to take them all back out. So I'll just put it up there somewhere. It will stay. And to hook up our wires, I'll start with our ground. Just take a Phillips screwdriver, back that screw out. Just make sure you don't back it out all the way, because once this drops on the ground, it's going to be super hard to find, and it's also kind of difficult to get it lined back up with its hole. But we'll take our white wire, give it a nice twist, and push that into the GD. Just push it in and make sure that your copper is going to make contact with your screw. And we'll tighten that down. Put some force behind it. Give it a tug, make sure it's not going to come out. And I'll go ahead and hook all of our other wires up. So I have everything wired in here. Now would be a good time to tie in any other power accessories that you might have. For example, a charge line, which I'm actually going to do now. So once I have that tied in, I'll come back and I'll show you how we covered everything up and then how we mounted it. Before we add our RTV and get everything bolted up, it's a good idea to test everything, just make sure everything's working. So right now I have this hooked up to a 7-way tester. You could also just hook this up to your RV 7-way and use that to test it. But I'll run through all the lights now, starting with tail lights, then our left turn, and brake lights, and right turn. All right, now that we have ensured that everything works, we can go ahead and just fill it up with RTV. This is a big failure point for any kind of trailer wiring or flat tow wiring. So this RTV will seal this up and just keep any debris or dirt or especially corrosion from getting in here. So just make sure that you have every little piece of copper completely covered. And then once this dries out, it'll make a nice seal. And no moisture should be able to get in here. So once we have that nice and covered up, we'll slide our boot down over it. You may make a little mess, but that's not that big of a deal. And once that boot is on, I'll grab some electrical tape and just try to tape this boot down, make sure it doesn't want to slide off. So I'll go from one end of the boot, and then I'll also use this tape as a seal on the other end. Like I said, you really don't want to get any moisture down in here. So once it does, all of your wires will get corroded, and that's just not fun. So once you have that nicely taped up, my hands are slippery, but get that there. So we're ready to mount this. This is going to mount right here, just with a couple self-tapping screws. Get those in there. And once that's mounted up, I'll go ahead and get our included piece of wire loom, wrap it up onto anything that's going to be visible. But otherwise, that's going to do it. That's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Roadmaster towed vehicle wiring kit with smart diodes for vehicles with LED taillights on a 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe.